All righty. Hey, everybody. How y'all doing tonight? We are the Randall County Republican headquarters here in Amarillo, 3219 South Commerce. You guys are always welcome to come in, and got Tim Revelle on tonight. He's our county chair. We have Travis Hayes. He's the vice chair, and he's over the 110. And I'm Alex Deanda. I am over the 111. Tonight, we have the great pleasure of having Alex Yarbrough on. Alex, how you doing tonight?
Good. How are you?
Hey, we're great, man. Thank you for taking some time out of your busy schedule. I know that you're always running and gunning out there, aren't you?
It's busy some days. The weather's cooling down, though, so that's nicer.
Well, good deal. Well, let me read your bio a little bit so the folks out there that are going to be watching this later on, while they're on the road or in their office or on lunch break, they can kind of get a little gist of who you are, okay?
Sure.
All right. Alex Yarbrough is a shareholder at the Underwood Law Firm. He and his wife, Kelsey, have two children, Payton and Zane. Kelsey is a preschool teacher. The Yarbroughs live in Bushland, Texas, with two dogs and a barn cat. They are actively involved with Hillside Christian Church. Alex is the president of the Amarillo chapter of the Federalist Society. Alex has handled multiple appeals, both criminal and civil. As a lifelong conservative Republican, Alex has defended religious liberties when they are attacked. His experience as a former law clerk for District Judge Reyes in Lubbock, Texas, has provided him with unique insight into civil procedure and the internal workings of the court system. He understands firsthand the responsibilities and the expectations that are required in the justice system. So, Alex, for folks out there, they need to know, what's the spot that you're running for, and what does it consist of?
Sure. So I'm running for the third place 3, on the 7th Court of Appeals. So the 7th Court of Appeals comprises of 46 counties in the Panhandle. It's a huge district. It goes all the way to the Oklahoma border, all the way down past Lubbock to Post. And, when you're explaining to people the Court of Appeals, people are like, oh, yeah, Court of Appeals. So in Texas, we've got Justice of the Peace, and then you can go up to county court. Then you can go up to district court. And I think district court is what most people think of when they think of judges in Texas. I think that's where most people are, into district court. But then above the district court is the courts of appeals in Texas. There's 14 of them. Ours is the 7th. It's kind of the Amarillo and Lubbock area. But then you can go even higher than the courts of appeals. We have 2 higher courts. We have the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals, which hears all the criminal cases. And then we have the Texas Supreme Court. So,
okay.
The Court of Appeals is for nerds, because it's you're spending your time writing opinions instead of having trials. So the most action you'll get as far as people in your courtroom is when you have oral arguments. And, each side will get, 20 minutes essentially to make their case. But it's not like a normal trial courtroom like people see on TV, essentially.
Sure. And in these types of settings, you guys are just basically doing quality control, if you will, over the trial, the proceedings and whatnot. Are there some things that you can speak on that kind of, when you do find something, is it usually far left things when it comes to like, wow, how they missed that? Or are they just little small items that you do have to still hold it up to the Constitution to make sure that, it's done right? You know what I mean? What are some things that you see sometimes?
Yeah, I think it depends. For the most part, I don't ever see, at least in the Panhandle, Texas judges going off the rails. You know what I mean? I think I'm on way too many email listservs, and you'll get the horror stories from other states.
Mm-hmm.
There's one from down south in Texas where the judge kind of goes off the rails and probably doesn't do a fair trial. But I'm going to be truthful. I don't really hear much of that in the Panhandle. I think most of our judges up here do a good job. And so, whenever it gets up to the Court of Appeals, it's probably just to make sure, hey, all the procedure was correctly followed. Everybody got a fair trial. Everybody got their due process. And not only do you have to find if there was an error, you have to find if it actually caused harm. And so even if something maybe was a technical mishap, if it didn't cause harm, it's probably not reversible. So
I see. Okay. What was it that compelled you to run for this particular seat this go around?
sure. So, when you're talking to people and they go to court, I think one of the biggest factors is they want to make sure they get a fair shot. And I'm gonna be honest, this Court of Appeals in the Panhandle, it is most likely the last place for the court system to get it right. So it is rare for the Texas Supreme Court, if we're just going to talk about civil cases, it's rare for the Texas Supreme Court to actually pick up a case if it's appealed even higher. They don't have mandatory jurisdiction. They get to pick their cases. So for most people, if they go to trial and they lose or have a bad outcome and they want to appeal, this Court of Appeals is their last shot. And I truly want people to know that if they're going to the Court of Appeals and I'm on it, they're going to have two things. One, they're going to have a conservative justice looking at it. And two, they're going to have somebody who knows the law looking at it. I had the pleasure and the fortune when I first started in Amarillo, a couple of the people that I worked with, they didn't like doing appeals. And so they would say, hey, Alex, we have an appeal. Come over here. Will you help write this appeal and go argue it? And so, over 10 years ago, I started working on these appeals, and I've seen a lot of different things. I've defended churches and cities and mom and pops. I've done family law stuff. And so I've seen a wide variety of cases, and I think that's important so that when somebody is appealing their case, they know somebody is going to give them a fair shot and look at it and take the time to look at it.
All right. Well, thank you. I think Tim might have a question for you. Tim, here's our county sheriff.
Yeah. Could you kind of elaborate on the type of cases that would come before the Court of Appeals? For example, family law or corporate law or whatever.
Sure. So this court gets to see it all. So you're going to see family law appeals, you're going to see criminal appeals, and you're going to see civil appeals. And that's the thing that I think it's important people to know. I've done all those types of things. I worked in the DA's office. I've done family law. I primarily do complex civil litigation now, whether it's defending cities or churches or things like that. But this Court of Appeals is going to see everything. I mean, they crank out 400 to 500 opinions every year. In fact, I just won an appeal last week.
Oh, congratulations.
So basically, it is a lot of book work.
It is. So it is a lot of research. It is a lot of writing. You've got some staff attorneys up there who help with some of the research, but it is really doing a deep dive into statutes and case law to make sure everything was properly and handled correctly.
Adjudicated. Yeah.
Correct.
Travis, you have anything there? You have any questions for Mr. Yarbrough?
Yeah, I'd like to know a little bit more about why the Federalist Society exists, what purpose it exists for, and what are their goals.
Sure. So the Federalist Society, one of their main tenets is essentially against judicial activism. They want to make sure that judges don't legislate from the bench. But truly, a few years ago, I think there was a group of people that realized, hey, there are a lot of liberal-leaning law professors who don't give a conservative viewpoint of the law. And so when people go to law school or they go hear talks and they're conservative and they don't get to hear a conservative viewpoint. And so the Federalist Society, got together on a practical level, and we bring in conservative speakers. We have law students divisions in most of the law schools. We have lawyer divisions in a lot of the towns. And it's a safe place for debate. And so a lot of the stuff we do is centered around debate. And so we'll bring people on polar opposites of the spectrum, qualified people, both The last one I watched was a debate on whether or not we should get rid of qualified immunity for police officers. So they had a lawyer who defends police officers talking about why we need qualified immunity, and then they had a law professor talk about how they should get rid of qualified immunity. And so, they have good podcasts. It's a good source of information for people. I know that President Trump used the Federalist Society as kind of a measuring stick to find a lot of his federal judges, because you're probably getting somebody that's conservative and pays attention to the law.
Yeah, it seems that as some of these young individuals go to law school and are very, I guess they're talking, or they're programmed to do the law a certain way and how to interpret it. And then those individuals then become lawyers and then judges and, people involved in politics. And so that's one of the things that I see that we're dealing with on an ongoing basis.
Right.
Have you noticed that?
Oh, yeah. And I want to make sure I don't, the Federalist Society kind of stays out of politics.
Yeah.
For the most part. But, they just kind of say, hey, look, it's okay to have a conservative viewpoint of the law. But I think it's not just in law school. I think a lot of academia is liberal leaning. And a lot of the college professors are liberal leaning. And so sometimes these young kids are going to college and impressionable still, and they feel like it's not okay to have a conservative opinion. And almost like if you raise your hand and assert a conservative opinion, you get lashed at. And it's not good for our society.
In the situation of, the three categories, I guess there's affirm, there's going to retry, and then finding something else as far as reversing. What are some of the numbers that you see? If you can speak on that, in this area versus other areas, I can imagine, if I'm just going to guess, like in some West Coast areas, I can bet that some of the appellate decisions are probably reversed based on political leanings, but when it comes to more conservative areas like Texas in this area, what do you think some of the numbers are there in percentages?
Yeah, I don't know the exact numbers. I know that most of the cases here, I think the trial court ruling is affirmed.
Yeah.
And that goes to show that the trial judges in our area are doing a good job.
Yes, sir.
And, whether there's lots of options. Sometimes they could reverse and render, and that happens a lot. I don't want to get too lawyerly, but if there's not jurisdiction in the case and the court heard it, they appeal it, and somebody's saying, well, the court really wasn't supposed to hear that case. I'm thinking about it right now, but it's a mouthful, but like the ecclesiastical abstention doctrine, a fancy way of saying churches should govern churches and not the government. And sometimes people can sue churches, and that law applies where the court doesn't have jurisdiction.
Wow.
And so it should just be a church matter, not a government matter, essentially.
Yeah, I had no idea that was even something that would.
I think most of the stuff is affirmed, but not all.
Yeah, in today's day and age, we're dealing with a lot of situations where people are getting doxxed that are on the jury. I heard of a horrible case out of Oklahoma City where Daniel Holzclaw, he got sentenced to 236 years with zero evidence. And it was because of pressure from activist groups that they were putting on the jury. I couldn't believe that they didn't appeal that and just go through the basics. And it just goes to show you that in today's day and age, how much of a influence a city is leveraged just because they don't want a riot to occur. You know what I mean? Speak on that. I mean, what do you think about that? I don't know, component to the judicial aspect of what we're looking at in the 2022, 23, 24 of all the things that we're seeing in the political climate and how much of a lean it has on you guys as just workers for the community and things like that.
It just reminds me on how thankful I am to live in this area.
Yeah.
So I grew up in Littlefield, Texas, up by Lubbock. I went to school in San Angelo. I lived in Lubbock for a little bit. Now I live in Bushland, right outside of Amarillo. I'm a West Texas guy through and through. And when I turn on the news and I see these riots in all these other areas that are potentially affecting the judicial system, I'm just thankful that we live in an area where I don't really see that a lot. I mean, we'll see a few protests downtown when things happen with like the Supreme Court, but as far as people protesting somebody who's currently in trial, I just hardly ever see that in this area. I just don't think it's something we see a lot.
Yeah. Well, I'm thankful as well. I've had to make decisions for my family not to go certain places because I'm thinking, geez Louise, I mean, if that's happening in those cities, and that's where it starts to affect you in the long run, in your economy and just that's why it's so important for judges to be to not legislate from the bench, to just look at the law as it is written. And
yeah, you're talking about not going places. My wife and I had bucket list cities that we went to visit. And, I think some of them we recently had to mark off after some of this stuff.
I'll tell you what, when you ran for the 47th District Court, how was that experience?
It was great. I think I jumped in too late. I think my opponents had already been campaigning about a year before I got in. So learned that I need to jump in and work harder sooner if I ever did something again. But truthfully, we got to go around and meet thousands of people in the Panhandle, Amarillo Canyon, over there in Armstrong County. And for the most part, everybody's super nice. I mean, even your opponents. And so you got a glimpse into the political process here in the Amarillo area. I got to meet a bunch of people. I can say I learned how to hammer in a T-post better than I ever thought I would. But
yeah, most certainly.
Yeah.
What's something that you would want to? Oh, I'm sorry, Tim. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, putting the T-post in isn't as hard as taking them out.
That is true. The night we were all taking the signs down, everybody had their little trick to take out a T-post, with the hammer and where you lean it. Hey, I'm not going to lie. I work smart, and so I had a T-post puller. I mean, you just put that bad boy on and it pulls it up lickety-split. So sometimes it's better to work smarter instead of harder.
Yeah, it is.
That's correct. What's something that you would like to do if you were to get the nod? What's something that you would look at first? I mean, your docket. What are you going to want to do day one?
Yeah, so this court cranks out 400 or 500 opinions a year, and Justice Pirtle's spot is still getting assigned cases, even though there's no justice there right now. And so that first week or two, you've got to get in there and get a jump so that there's not a backlog created. The Seventh Court of Appeals does a great job of clearing their docket. And so if I was to get this nod, I think it's going to be some long nights for that first month or two just to make sure everything's caught up, because you don't want to have a backlog because of you, because that messes with the other justices.
Yeah.
There's four of you. You've got to all work together, and you got to pull your weight and get your stuff done.
That's right.
Hey, Alex.
Yes, sir.
The Republican Party itself likes all candidates to be very active in the party, and not on a case level, but on a personal level. What are your thoughts and concerns about candidates being actively involved with the party?
I'm sorry, I could barely hear you.
The Republican Party desires candidates to be active in the party, not on a case level in your case, but on a personal level. What are your thoughts about candidates after they file with the Republican Party, to be very active in the party?
Yeah. So you're saying should they not be involved anymore?
I want them to.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I think there's not a problem with coming out and getting involved. And I think as part of a justice on this Seventh Court of Appeals, you've got a heavy burden because you got 46 counties. And so you need to be able to go visit each county and stay involved. Now, I think there's a difference between staying involved in the Republican Party and staying involved in certain trade groups. For example, I'm a member of the Texas Association of Defense Counsel. And so that's the organization that promotes, defense work in the civil world. I think I'd have to resign from that because you don't want a plaintiff's attorney to say, oh, he's a defense guy. You want everybody to think, hey, you're getting a fair shake. Now, I think you need to stay involved with the Republican Party. You need to hear what people are talking about. You need to hear what's going on in your area. And that's one of the best places to figure out what's going on. Plus, they have good dinners and speakers.
That's the real answer.
Exactly.
I'm just joking. Look, being a part of this party, it's I was raised a Democrat. This is your show, but I'll just give my little spill here. I just don't know how you can get away with selling that we're for the poor, and I'm looking the other way, saying, well, that one's there for making you better. I don't see how that would work in any other format other than the political one that they advertise. And that's why I asked when I was real young, why are we Democrat, Mom? And she said, well, they help the poor. And I said, well, why are we still poor? And I learned a long time ago. So,
well, I think, and this is just my personal opinion, but I truly believe that a lot of the people that are still hanging on to the Democratic Party, it's not the party that it used to be.
Yeah.
And if they really took a close look at it, I'm not sure much of the values that they once had are still there.
Yeah, I think that's a very good assessment. I kind of look at it with the unions. The unions, when they were created, it was a good idea. And then people got in and thwarted it, hijacked it, and made it, ugly.
Right.
So yeah. Tim, you have any other questions?
Yeah, I guess the other thing is judges in a lot of cases are restricted to things that they can participate in because they are judges. And I think that in some respects that's very good, so that they don't become biased. But I think that's one of the things that the profession has not done a great job, because I think that, like you do, is that it's a good place to see what's happening in the community. But there are several restrictions of what they can do and how they can do it.
Right. Yeah, and you kind of have to make sure you have the right perspective on things. With everything you do, there's pros and cons. The con of getting on the court is I'm no longer an advocate for clients. You've got to be neutral, and you're an arbiter. You're looking at things. I go to the legal aid clinic and work there every month, and I have for like the last 4 or 5 years. Well, I wouldn't be able to do that anymore. But if you switch your perspective a little bit, you'll be able to, as a justice on the Court of Appeals, you'll be able to help a lot more people. So just make sure that their case got heard correctly. So.
Yeah, and that's important. And that's important because sometimes it's just the fine points that, not through ignorance or anything, that a lawyer might miss that. It's just the fact that, there are so many ways that you can win or lose a case.
Right.
you have anything, Travis, that you want to add?
I'm good.
Okay. Well, Mr. Yarborough, I really appreciate you taking some time to, get with us here. I know you're very busy. Like I said earlier, you're always running and gunning and doing things, and we appreciate you. I want to take just a little time to allow you to basically sound us off and why folks should, in this special session, it's the precinct chairs. Why should we, choose you over the other folks?
Right. Yeah. So you mentioned it's this special setting, and I wanted to touch on that just a little bit because, if people watch this 5 months or a year from now, they're going to be like, "What's going on?" So Justice Pirtle retired in May, and that left a vacancy on the 7th Court of Appeals. And so because he retired after the primary, but more than 74 days before the general election, technically we're going to have a special election held in conjunction with the general one in November. And so that triggered a process where the Republican Party and the Democratic Party, their executive committees, which consist of county chairs and precinct chairs, can vote whose name goes on the ballot. And so for this one, on this Saturday, August 20th, in Plainview, Texas, at the Plainview Civic Center, or their country club, 2902 West 4th, the 46 county executive committees get to show up and vote. And I think it's pretty neat for our area. This does not happen very often. And a lot of the time, precinct chairs is a thankless job. I mean, it's work and it's not paid. And I know you're a precinct chair. And I mean, have you ever done one of this on this scale?
Nope.
I mean, and I think it brings recognition to the Republican Party. And it brings recognition at a time when we need it. I know there's Beto's going around and Abbott's going around, and we need to keep Texas red. And so I'm glad that this process is happening. But the precinct chairs get to show up in Plainview and vote this Saturday, and I'm asking for them to vote for me. I think I'm the most conservative choice. I didn't just wake up and say I'm a Republican. I've been voting Republican my whole life in every election. I didn't just wake up and all of a sudden have a passion for public service. I've been doing public service work for as long as I can remember. And I think I'm one of the most qualified candidates. I've handled a wide variety of appeals all the way to the Texas Supreme Court. I've seen a lot of different things, and I'm going to work harder than any of the other candidates. And I think it's important that the candidate be ready to go. Whoever gets this nod is going to have to run in like 2 months. And not only that, they have to run again in 2024. And so I think I'm backed by half of the law enforcement in the Panhandle. I've got a top-notch team ready to go to hit the ground running. We've got a website up. We've got signs made. I mean, we're ready to hit the ground running. And so I want the precinct chairs who show up to this meeting to feel confident when they go back to their counties and meet with the people in their precinct that they gave the person who got the nod was the most conservative, most qualified, and ready to go. And they can be proud of who they voted for. And I want to make them proud.
Well, once again, thank you, Alex. We'll be seeing you on Saturday. Again, for you folks out there, we are at 3219 South Commerce. Come see us anytime. Our number is 806-359-1606. Alex, you have a good night, sir.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Alex.
Thanks, y'all.
Thank you.